So welcome to the Web 101 talk. My name is Walt. This is Will. And just a bit about us. I work for an agency called Geo. We do a lot of web and design things. We do lots of web and design things that we can't really talk about. And this is Will. You want to explain? Cool.
Hi guys, I'm Will. I've been a software developer for about 5 years, working at some large companies here in New Zealand. And for the past roughly 2 years, I've sort of been working on my own projects, my own startups. And my current project right now is Swiftly.nz, which is a e-commerce platform, and it's used by 900 stores in New Zealand. And also Walter works on that with me too when he's not doing his full-time job.
Yeah, sounds about right. So, what are we going to cover? The web is a gigantic topic, and we don't really have time to cover everything in specifics. So we'll quickly rush through a little bit of history, how all the moving parts work at a high level, and then we're going to do a little demo. We're going to build an end-to-end social media app from scratch. In how long? Half an hour?
Yeah, well, we'll see how long it takes.
So working front end, working back end, working database, on the internet, deployed, on infrastructure.
Then hopefully all of you guys are going to be able to come in and start posting on it.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that sounds good. Good to see no one has left yet. And yeah, let's roll. So, who can tell me who this guy is? Anyone? Yeah, what did he do?
Created the web, World Wide Web.
Correct. And yeah, this guy invented the web, the internet as we know it, or HTML to start, hypertext markup language. It was originally built just to share documents. So things that we take for granted today, all the stuffy academic journal articles that you have to go through for uni, it was originally built to replace that. So when you look at a HTML document, as you can see up there, that was what we began with. There was no CSS, there was no JavaScript. It was just tags. You want something bold, you write a bold tag. You want something italic, you write an italic tag, an I tag. And yeah, it was pretty basic. Yeah, all JavaScript, CSS, all that fun stuff only comes along later. Hold on, where'd that slide go? You lost the slide. There we go. Actually, no, we'll pass it, we'll save it for later. Let's go back. So, we move on. A couple of years pass, and it's no longer just used by academics. People start selling stuff on the internet. This was one of the first Amazon websites. There was no cart, there was no, well, there were listings, but there was no management portal, there was no CMS, there were no admin tools. You quite literally just changed a 1 to a 0 in HTML and shit came out. There were no contact forms, there was no advanced functionality. If you ordered something off a website like that, you sent an email and they sent you an invoice back. A human answered it on the other end. There wasn't much automatic, there wasn't much functionality. And it kind of sucked. So then we hit Web 2.0. Things like, tools like PHP become a thing. Tools like Ruby on Rails become a thing. You can start writing logic on your server. Not all pages look the same if you visit them. So for example, I log into Facebook, I see something different to Will who signs on to Facebook. The server becomes smart enough to send out different content to people. You start seeing more advanced functionality like images, new layouts, lots of new toys as opposed to just content. You can actually start using the web, JavaScript, and CSS to build chat tools, to build games, to build things that people actually want to use. Oh yeah, and people started making money. So now, what do we have? We have real-time chat, we've got augmented reality, working in the browser, we've got video calling, working from a browser with no installs required. And with that comes a bit of baggage. Gigantic number of tools. Where do I start? How do I navigate through which one's the best one for me? And honestly, it's a mess, which will cover very soon. So let's take a look at, let's break down the front end into 3 parts if you're working on the web. You've got HTML, which is what people see. It's the content. So if you're looking at a grocery list, the content that you see here is the name of your vegetable, how much it costs. This is the presentation. This is how it gets presented. Whether it's a paragraph, whether it's a title, whether it's in a card. And for further reading, because we don't have enough time to go into this, I'd recommend looking up semantic HTML and ARIA accessibility. Well, more importantly, the first one, because a lot of developers I know write write everything in div tags, and it does make things a bit difficult.
That's me.
Yeah, I've got to clean up. And just with HTML, this is what you get. This was one of the first web pages ever built. It's just title, paragraph, link. There's no styling, there's no pretty fonts, there's no pretty images. It's just information. Now, let's talk about CSS. The document markup, if you want to be specific. This is the language that you write if you want to make it usable, beautiful. You make it do what you want. For example, if you look at this code here, I've told it to make everything Comic Sans. It gives you the ability to customize and style your content. For further reading, check out media queries and breakpoints. So what those two do is they allow you to tell the web page to do different things at different device sizes. So for example, if I write a media query that show this picture of Will on mobile only, don't show it on desktop. You do it with those, and we'll show an example of those later on. Likewise, so pseudo selectors allow you to do things like select links or hover states. So like when you hover over a link, make it do fancy animations, or make it do change the color. They let you do a little more advanced. They let you perform more advanced functionality, and again, we'll cover that in the demo. Likewise with BEM and SMAX, those two are ways of writing CSS. You'll want to learn some method if you're writing a very big application, which I'll show you in a second. So this is Twitter, for example. Every rectangle you see there is an element. Piece of advice, when you're talking about CSS and HTML, everything is a rectangle. Just keep that in mind if your designer gives you shit. Just ask them to articulate it in rectangles. Because when the browser renders it, this is what it'll do. It just draws, rectangle, 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 rectangle. And anything to add? All right, let's roll. We've also got front end, well, JavaScript. For example, Fart app. It lets you do logic in the browsers. So who here has written any Java or C++ or any language, for example? Sweet. So you can't write, so CSS and HTML aren't Turing complete, but JavaScript is. And you can't write a hello world well, you can write a hello world, but you can't write a for loop, for example, with HTML. You can with JavaScript. So for example, this bit of JavaScript says, actually, no, I forgot a bracket there, but
It's fine.
yeah, when you click the play button, find the fart sound and play it. So when I click that, And yeah, that's the basics for me on the front end. I'll hand you over to Will for the back end.
Okay. So when it comes to actual complex web applications, mostly it's sort of broken up into 3 separate layers. And the presentation layer is basically what runs on the browser. Then we've sort of got an application and a data layer. And I'm sure that our lectures at uni probably have covered this in some sense. Can you guys raise your hand if you've ever seen a 3-tier architecture before? A few people. Okay, that's really sad. Uni should definitely be covering this. So when you hear about like how Facebook works, for example, is that all of the user data is stored in the database, and the application servers do like authentication, the business logic, and finally sends out the HTML to your browser, so you can see your own feed, for example. So a lot of people sort of get confused between the difference between the back end and the front end, and I just want to go over it and make it really, really clear. So in the front end, all of your code, your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript is delivered to the browser. It runs within a sandboxed environment, so that means that basically it has no access to the operating system, and it can only do things using stuff that the browser makes available. So for example, stuff like that is playing sounds like Walt did in the previous slide, communicating over the internet with like fetch APIs, talking to like Bluetooth devices. It can do all of that, but it's all made available through the browser, and it's not accessing any of the operating system's fundamentals. But when you write like backend code, that's sort of the code that runs on your server. And what that is, that's running unrestricted on the operating system. You can access the file system, you can access sockets, you can access anything you want. That's the same as like when you just develop code normally. You can write backend web code in any language, and it can communicate via any protocol. The use cases usually are for storing data, authentication, and the business logic. And there's sort of multiple different types of web apps that you might have come across, but I find that all of this is kind of confusing until it's sort of laid out. So back in the day, that's sort of like Web 1.0 style is static websites. If you've got like a portfolio site or something hosted on GitHub pages, that's all a static website. And then later on, basically Web 2.0 was sort of server-side rendering, which is Facebook, which was heavily, which used PHP like Facebook, MySpace, WordPress, for example. And server-side rendering means that it uses HTML as a template, and the server basically populates in with data from the database and then sends it to the client. So that's how Facebook used to do sort of dynamic websites. But what sort of the trend is that you'll hear most people talk about today when they talk about web applications is single page apps. And single page apps, like frameworks for building them are like React, Vue, Angular. And what they do is their entire application is controlled by JavaScript, and there isn't actually much HTML in the middle. And then they usually talk to a backend, and how that backend, it sends data rather than sending HTML. But we're going to go through an example of all of this. Just quickly want to touch on infrastructure and the cloud. Previously, back in the day, if you wanted to deploy a web application, you would have had to go rent a server in some sort of data center, and you would have deployed your code on some sort of Linux box. But nowadays, infrastructure as a service is a thing, which means that you can basically log into AWS and you can provision a server, or you can log into Azure, which is by Microsoft, provision a server, or a Google Cloud platform. And then what most people sort of get started with, because when you do infrastructure as a service, it's a little bit complicated, but there's solutions that are called platform as a service. And what they tend to be is that they're all built on top of cloud providers, but you just upload your code and it just works. So we'll be using Heroku and Netlify today for the demo. And just briefly, I just wanted to touch on some common stacks, like how all of this sort of fits together. So the LAMP stack is something that was incredibly popular probably 10 years ago. And I know that all of the unis sort of taught this. And this is sort of what MySpace was written in, what Facebook was written in. Early TradeMe was definitely LAMP stack. WordPress still uses it. And that means that it just runs on Linux, uses Apache as a web server, the application's mainly written in PHP, server-side renders the HTML, and it uses the MySQL database. But nowadays, what people are sort of, the trendy stack that everyone's sort of learning is the MERN stack, which is MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js, where React is your front end, Node and Express is your back end application, and MongoDB is your server. Is your database. But in reality, most companies use a lot more technologies than just one of these simple stacks. There's a website called stackshare.io, which I really like browsing sometimes. And it lists out all of the technology that a certain company uses. So here's just an example. It actually goes down for miles after this. So this is just some of the technology that both Airbnb and Uber are using. So there's a lot, and yeah, so you can't like, we'll go back.
Nope.
Sorry, okay, wait, what? I clicked too far.
There we go. Yeah,
Okay.
so what's the demo, man?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, I'll carry on. Okay, so we're gonna build a really simple, stripped down version of Twitter, where you've got a feed, you've got a place where you can post, and everyone can see those posts. We'll be getting into that very soon. Have you got the
Yeah.
repo set up? Yeah, cool. All right, you're gonna set up from scratch in that empty repo, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Has everyone here used Git before? Okay, cool. Yeah, feel free to follow along and yeah, let's take a look. We'll be building something like this. And yeah, let's go.
I wanted to talk about it for a second before I
Let's go.
Yeah, so just briefly, the sort of stack that we're going to be using to build Lamau book is on the front end, we're going to be using React, and we're going to host it on Netlify. And then for the back end, we're going to use Node.js, Harpy.js, which is instead of Express, because I'm not a big fan of Express. We're going to have a MongoDB database. We're going to deploy the application to Heroku, and we're going to have the database live on MongoDB Atlas, which is a really easy way to set up a MongoDB server. And sort of our architecture for this is that since it's simply, you're just going to be able to post comments and then we're going to read them, we're going to have two API endpoints on the back end. The first one is going to list the last 20 comments, and the post endpoint is going to create a new comment. And what we're going to store in the database is a bunch of comments, and they're going to have a name and they're going to have a message.
Oh, yep.
For getting new posts, are you polling or are you using websites?
When doing neither, you're going to have to refresh the page. But we can poll if you want. We'll see if we get there. Yeah, I just wanted a quick sort of bit of notes here. The skill level of this is probably what you'd expect for someone who's a graduate developer who's sort of been working in a company. So if you're not pretty confident, I wouldn't recommend trying to follow along because we're probably going to go pretty fast and we have a lot to cover in probably an hour. At the end, the code will be available on GitHub, so you guys can go have a look and see it in your own time. I'll try to talk through what I'm doing as I do it. I think the important thing is to understand the concepts, not to understand the specific lines of code. Yeah.
What is this being recorded?
Yeah, we are recording it at the back, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, if our phone's working. We'll try and make it available online if we can.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
Shall we switch?
Yeah, and I'm gonna code the outline of it, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Walt, and he's gonna style it and make it look good. Okay.
Adios. Come on, do the thing. There we go.
Can I come up here?
Yeah, you take that.
Yeah.
I'll be. Is it working?
It's not working.
Oh, there we go. No. Are we back yet?
Technical difficulties.
Are we
Sorry.
there yet? Nope.
do you have everything installed, like Create, React?
Yeah, I do. There we go. Oh, look at
No.
that.
Okay, we're good. Cool. Um, yeah, maybe.
Give me a second, I'll pull it up.
Cool. So I've just got a fresh folder here on my computer. I've got nothing in it at the moment. And I'm just going to make a folder at the moment called Lamalbus backend. Can everyone see, by the way? Is this big enough?
Just zoom. Zoom in a bit. Sorry. Yeah, there we go.
Is that good, guys?
We good?
Yes.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. And this is going to be our Node.js backend in here. So I'm just going to cd in here. I'm going to npm init to create a new node project. I'm just going to smash enter through all of this. That's going to create a package.json file. I'm also going to touch index.js, which just makes a index.js thing. If you're not using a Mac or a Linux computer, that's not going to work. And then I'm going to also add a git ignore file. And
You should probably paste the node stuff in.
what's that, sorry?
The npm node.
I'm going to do that in a second. And I'm also going to make a prop file. And what a prop file is for Heroku when you deploy to Heroku. I've also got a few things that I'm going to install. And I'm just going to copy these in here. So that's our 3 dependencies, which is Harpy.js, .env, and MongoDB.
What do they do?
We'll be using them in a second. Yeah. And I'm just going to add some things to my git ignore. So I'm just going to add our node modules.
Why are we doing that?
Yeah, I will tell you in a second once I type it. Sorry. So a git ignore basically excludes any folders from your Git repository, and node modules are our dependencies. So we don't want to be committing them to Git. And also we're going to make one more file, which is a .env file. And .env files also, we don't want to commit these to Git, and these usually hold like secrets that we want to keep on our backend. And we obviously don't want to put these into Git. So at this point, what I'm going to do is also add in the .env to our git ignore, and I'm going to go and push this to a repository on GitHub. So I've got the repo set up here, and I'm just going to copy all of this from GitHub, and I'm going to push it. Cool, that seemed to work. I'm just going to check. Okay, it didn't work. Might help if I git add dot and git commit. Sorry. Anything and git push.
On action.
And we've got all of our code here. I'm also going to add something into my prop file, which is going to help let this app run on Heroku when we get here later, which is just this line web node index.js, which is telling Heroku this is how to start the server later. Okay, now we're just going to make a basic web server in this index.js file. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to check if process.env, sorry, let me check my previous code here. .node env is not equal to production. What this does is this code basically will be the code that's not running when we're on Heroku, and then we might have some code that runs when we're actually running it in production. But what we're going to do here is we're just requiring this library that I included earlier called .env, and I call .config on this. And what this means is that it's pulling these environment variables that we haven't set yet and letting our application use them. When we're in Heroku, we don't need this because Heroku can just inject environment variables in, and you can set them in the UI. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to load in Harpy.js, which is our web server. And yep, that's all I'm going to do here. And I'm going to create a function, an async function called run, and I'm going to call it. And I'm going to create a web server in here. So I'm going to go server equals v.server. And in here, I'm going to go and I'm going to set a port to 5000. And that's all I'm going to do right now. And I'm just going to go server.start. And I need to write await on this because this is an asynchronous function, server.start. And I'm just going to print out a message too. And I'm also going to pull out the port as well into a variable. Okay, so what this has done is just created like a basic backend server. Right now it would run, but it's not going to do anything. What we need to do is register some routes for our backend so that when we actually go to this address, you're actually going to get some data back. So I'm going to go server.route, and in here, I'm going to go path. I can't see anything because of thank you VS Code being so blown up. We're going to give it a path and a method. I'm going to make this smaller for a second, sorry. And I'm going to make a handler.
What's a handler?
Yeah, I'm going to get there in a second, sorry. I'm just going to write the code first. It's really hard to code and talk at the same time. So what this does is basically it means that when you go to this web server and you hit this path, basically the root path of your server, a handler is going to run. And whatever code we write in this handler is sort of the backend code that's going to run. All we're doing here is we're returning a string hello world. So if I've coded this correctly, I can start this, and then if I get to navigate to localhost port 5000 on my computer, we should just get a plain string back that says hello world. So I'm going to give that a go. Hopefully it works first try. Cool, server running on port 5000. And if I go to localhost 5000, we get hello world back. Clap, guys, clap. Thank you, thank you. So this this Harpy.js framework is a lot easier than Express. I think all of the tutorials and people tend to tell you to use Express, but this one seems a little bit easier for me. And also what you can do here is if you decide to not just return a string, if you decide to return like an object, so I can make hello as a key and world as a value, and I rerun my server. What happens here is that this will automatically serialize it into a format called JSON. And this is how APIs, how you tend to send data from front ends to back ends, or back ends to front ends. Either way, it's a data serialization format, and it's sort of like the language at the end. Cool, so what I might do now is I might push this to GitHub again, and I'm going to deploy it to the end. Oh yeah, sorry. So every time to check our source code in, we just commit it and push it. I don't know if I can give a Git tutorial right now because that might be a little bit too long. There's one more thing that we have to do to make this work on Heroku. We're going to pull the port out into an environment variable. So I'm going to go like this. And then for port, I'm going to go process.env.port. And that means that it's going to load it from the environment variable. Why you have to do this is when we deploy it to Heroku, Heroku's going to automatically inject in the port because Heroku runs like thousands of these and they all run on different ports. And there's no way to know this unless you read the Heroku documentation. So, cool. So I'm going to create. I've already logged into Heroku. I'm going to create a new app. I'm going to call it Lamel Book Backend. It's going to be in the US. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it to GitHub. Lamel Book Backend. Cool. Enable automatic deploys. And so now as soon as we push code, this should deploy automatically to the internet and be available. So we'll just wait and see a little bit for this to sort of work. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to create a database. So here I've already logged into MongoDB Atlas, and this is a way to create a database serverlessly, a MongoDB database. So all you go is build cluster, and you can do this for free too. So I'm just going to leave all of this default, and I'm going to click create cluster.
So it's a free database, right?
Yeah, it's free for a while, I think. They definitely make a lot of money from this, I'm not sure. Not on the free tier. Okay, cool. Can you pull back up our example code? Yeah, might need the over here. Let's test this. Yeah, I don't know, let's sort of off the top of my head. Cool. I'm just going to check that this is deployed correctly. Okay, it didn't work. Not yet anyway. I think it's because we didn't push after I enabled automatic settings. But yeah, we need to wait a couple of minutes because the database takes a little bit of time to be created. And in the meantime, I might just start coding out the part that connects to the database. So I'm going to copy that from what I've done previously because I don't know that off the top of my head. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to import the MongoDB client. And I'm going to make a new Mongo client, which is what we use to talk to the MongoDB database. And I'm going to get the connection string, which is passed in here, which is basically includes like the username, password, and where your database is. I'm going to also call that out of an environment variable. So I'm going to call it process.env.mongodb connection. Since we don't have that string yet because the database is still being created, I'm going to put that in my M file too, but I don't have it yet. But we can still code out the rest of it and hopefully it will work once it's up. The first thing that I'm going to do here in our async run function is I'm going to call client.connect, which connects to our database. After that, I'm going to go and this is connecting to the database server, but we can then have to select a specific database. Each database server could have like many different databases within it. So we go constdb equals client.db, and we can call this whatever we want, and MongoDB will create it automatically if it doesn't exist. So we're just going to call it Lamel Book. And we're going to make a collection. So basically like a table inside your database, think of like a spreadsheet. That's called a collection in MongoDB. So we're going to go to a comment collection. Zoom. Okay, let's just go back and I'll check if all of this stuff has been done. We should say hello world if everything works. Okay, so this is live on the internet now, which is kind of cool. And now when we make changes to the backend, it's going to be continuously deployed and it'll be available. And also, our database is still being created. Here it is. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the database connection string from here. I'm going to allow access from anywhere. This is not a good idea.
Don't do this.
Don't do this.
Don't.
I'm going to make a user as well. And I'm going to auto-generate a secret password. I'm going to copy this, even though you guys have seen it. I'm doing this because hopefully no one's going to connect to this database now. And go like this and connect to the application. Cool. I'm just going to paste this password. So you guys would have to do this yourself if you wanted to run this application at home. So I'm going to take this connection string and I'm just going to replace this password. So I need to replace the password with my super secret password.
Seems legit.
And all of this stuff you should never show anyone any of this stuff. So I'm going to be deleting this database straight after this. Cool, so I don't want to connect to a specific database, I just want to connect to the server. So that looks like that should work. And I'm just going to try run this, and it should throw an exception if this doesn't work. But if the actual server runs, we'll know that the client was successfully be able to connect.
The truth.
Cool, server running on port 5000, it appears that it was able to connect. So that's good. So now we're actually we've done all of the boring setup stuff, and now we're actually gonna start building like our real application. And what we're gonna do is, as we said in that discussion before, we're gonna make two API endpoints, one which reads comments out of a database, and one that lets you post comments into a database. Okay. So on here, we're gonna make a comments endpoint, and we're gonna call it get, and we're also gonna make another route. Server.route. I'm just going to copy paste this because I don't want to deal with that autocomplete again. And we're going to make this a post endpoint. I'm just going to check my code. That's a wrong code, Walt. Thank you.
Getting ready for the front end stuff.
Yeah, okay, cool. And I'm going to make this handler async, which means that we can do asynchronous actions within it, like talk to a database. And this takes two variables, but we're only going to need the request. So what that means is when the front end sends a request to our server, we can pull out data out of the request, and that's all living within this object. So our API definition, which we talked about in the slides, was that we're going to our post endpoint is going to take in two parameters. It's going to take in a name, and it's going to take in a comment. So how to pull them out? Oh, a name and a message. So for your response name equals request.payload.name. So the payload is basically whatever lives within the body that our front end is going to send it. So pull out the name, and we're going to be writing the code to send this in a second on the front end. So the name and the message. We're just going to do it.
Yep, good.
Oh, sorry.
You gotta change the path, right?
Sorry.
You gotta change the path. It's still comments, / comments.
So what we're doing here is we have two different things living on /comments, and that's perfectly fine for us to do because one of them is a GET request and one of them is a POST request. And so in HTTP, there's about 7 different types of requests you can do, and some of them are GET, some of them are POST, puts, deletes. This is kind of a big topic, and I didn't particularly want to get too into depth on how that
I
works.
wanted to know if you can post in / comments. You can probably have something like create post or.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it however you want. It's completely up to you how you want to define the structure, if you want to call it create comment or if you want to call get comments or whatever. But there's a standard called REST, which I can't really explain here, but the idea is that basically gets should be for getting stuff, posts should be for creating stuff, puts should be for updating, and deletes should be for removing. And sort of the idea is you should put them all on the same endpoint. But yeah, we can call it create comment if you want. We'll do it. Is that how you spell create?
Yes, that's right.
I'm also just going to do a quick type check here of this data because this is JavaScript and you've got no idea what it is. So if one of you guys tried to post in like an array, it would break our whole application. So I'm just going to check that name is a string, name is not a string, and message is also a string too. And if they aren't, I'm going to go and I'm going to return success false. Type of, yep, you're right. Thank you. By day, I'm a .NET developer, not a JavaScript developer, so I'm not super familiar with this stuff, but so yeah. Now we're going to create our comment object, and in our comment object, we're going to take our name from what we passed out of that request body. We're going to take our message, and also I'm going to add a timestamp as well. And why I'm going to add a timestamp is so that we can order it by the last 20 posts created. Title function is cool. And now the last thing, which is actually saving it to our database, which is surprisingly the easiest thing. All we do is we go to our comment collection, and then we call .insert one, and we pass in this comment. And now we just return success true. And thus, you can return whatever you want. I like to return basically, if you're doing like updates, some sort of message to sort of show that things succeeded. You can sometimes, people will throw errors or they'll do other things here. I like to just keep it pretty simple. That tends to work. And now all we need to do is implement our get endpoint up here. And so for our get, we don't have to do anything with the request. All we have to do is basically query out of our database and pull out the posts. So I'm going to go comment cursor. And what a cursor means is, in the context of a database, is it's sort of like a point which remembers where you are within like a set of a table. So, for example, you can get a cursor, you can write a query, get a cursor, and then you can keep like fetching more and more data from that cursor. You can say like, I only want 10 posts, and then you can ask for like another 10 later. And this is just how these libraries are sort of structured, that you have to get a cursor first before you can execute the query and retrieve the data. So I'm going to write our query, which is our comment collection, and what we're going to write is .find, and we don't want to pass, we don't want anything, we just want all of the comments basically, but we want to sort it, and what we're going to sort it on is the timestamp, which we've saved before, and -1 means ascending, I think. And we're going to limit it to 20 comments, because if there's like 1 million comments in here, we really don't want to be pulling 1 million comments into memory. That's just going to crash our computer, and it's going to basically take forever. So
server cuts off as well.
not doing stuff like .limit 20, this is basically if you've ever been to a website and it starts running slower the more things are added, it's because they've probably missed it in one of their queries. So cool, and then we're going to go comments equals the comment cursor dot to array, and when you call like to array here on this MongoDB library, it's going to be executing this this query and getting the data from the cursor. And then we're just going to return the comments. And if all of it, and now we can test this and see if it all works.
So I see.
Oh.
Wait, I see.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Cool. That usually doesn't happen when I'm coding by myself. It usually just doesn't work. we've got this create comment thing, it's all running on our local host, and now I'm gonna use a program here called Postman to test this. And so what Postman is basically a way for testing web APIs and backends. It basically simulates browser requests, and you can just use it to test the stuff without having to go in and writing front-end code. So I'm gonna go to localhost 5000, and I'm gonna do a get on comments. I'm just gonna see if it works. Cool. So we got a response back, which is an empty array, which means that there's no comments yet. And now we're gonna call our create comment endpoint, and we're gonna write some raw JSON in here to test it out. So I'm gonna write a name, and my name is Will, and I'm gonna write a message, and my message is gonna be hello Will. Let's see if it works. 404 not found. Maybe because I should change it to a post request. Here's like all of the different requests that are possible. And also with these, it doesn't really matter what one you use. It's kind of just a semantic thing. Like people tend to use post because that's convention, but there's no reason why you couldn't create something with a delete request. They don't actually mean anything. They're just bits of text that was in a specification. Cool. So we got success false, which is exactly not what I wanted to happen.
Did you forget timestamp?
No, we were creating the timestamp here. Is my logic, I think my logic, type of message is equal to message, it should be a string. Can someone log me in, please? Thanks, buddy. Do you want us to,
I think it's dogs, right?
Yeah, it is dots. You can't. You're safe. Just look at the keyboard.
Thank you.
Come on, do the thing. Alright, we're good.
Yeah, we're definitely going to need internet because we're talking to a database on the internet. Okay, so I don't know if I saved my code. I'll just save it again and I'll rerun my server. Cool. Now I'll try this again. Success true. Okay, great. So that means that this has successfully posted some data to a backend. It's stored it in a database, and now we should be able to get it back by going back to HTTP. Just copy this over. Comments. Cool. So now we can see that message, and that's going to be available basically on the internet for everyone to be able to post in messages, and we're going to display it on our website. So the final thing that I'm going to do here with this backend, which is actually all done, I'm just going to commit this. So add database, hit push. And the one final thing is that I'm going to take my connection string and I'm going to go and I have to put this into Roku for my actual production application. So here I add the key, and the key is MongoDB connection. Cool. Okay, how are we going for time?
We got time.
Okay.
We got 40 minutes, I think.
Great. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna have time to get this all running. So I'm just gonna wait for this to deploy and I'm just gonna test it just to see that all of this is actually working correctly. I'm just gonna manually click deploy. And while that's happening, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna cd out of here and change directory back up, and I'm gonna go and create a new reactor, which is gonna be our front end. So I've got a script here. And I'm going to call it Lamelbook front end. So this is probably going to take a couple minutes because React is pretty slow, or it could be really fast. No, it's going to take some time.
Uni Internet is.
Actually, Uni Internet is way faster than my internet. Okay, So it looks like our app has deployed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of be testing this against localhost, which means connecting to my computer, I'm going to connect to our Heroku.
Oh, double slash.
Thank you. Cool, and we got the same response because it's pointing at the same database. And now people can post in stuff to that endpoint to create comments if anyone's got Postman open. Yeah, so if you got Postman open, feel free to start posting stuff in and start putting some comments in there because we're going to be developing live against this too.
Yep.
So whatever rubbish and offensive stuff you want to put in there, that's going to be, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. Okay, so now we've created a new React app in the Mailbook frontend. I'm just going to do some tidy up first where I'm just going to delete a whole bunch of files that we're not going to need. So,
Why do we notice?
yeah, we never test. We don't test anything here. I'm going to delete that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this logo. I'm going to delete all of that. So we just basically have a fresh, and I'm also going to delete this script code as well. So all that we're left here is we've just run create React app. We've deleted everything apart from app.js, app.css, which, do you need any of the CSS?
Purge it all.
Purge it all. Okay, we're deleting all of that. Probably want this, right? We'll just get the fonts.
Yeah, we'll do something to it.
Okay, and we're just going to write some HTML in here. Hello world. Well, the important thing here is that this is actually JavaScript, and this isn't really HTML. It looks like HTML, but we're in a JavaScript file, and how React works is it actually transpiles it and works out what HTML to create based on here. You can create custom tags and stuff with React. So even though it looks, it's not.
At the end of the day, HTML and CSS is being, being put out at the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's still HTML at the end of the day, but you're just doing some funny things in JavaScript.
Yep. Okay, so I'm just running npm install to install all the dependencies. It's probably going to download another like 100 megabytes of stuff.
Yep.
Um,
Some stuff.
okay, cool. We've got a git ignore in here, which is good. I just want to get this running first, and I'm going to deploy it to the internet. Okay, so I'm going to be using Netlify to deploy the front end. Netlify is a really easy way to deploy sort of static websites or React websites. So I'm going to connect to my repository first before I've even pushed anything to it, but we can do that while everything's installing on my local computer. So I've got the Mailbook front end here. It's empty. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait.
Everyone following along okay? All good?
Okay,
Sweet.
cool. Yeah, how is this for like difficulty? Is this complex or not complex? How do you guys
Simple
feel?
or-
Yeah, we're just going to try and actually get it done within the time frame because we've got probably another half an hour with this
Yeah.
afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sort of had that feeling, but we kind of just want to show you guys how something works like end to end. I think that's just
Start
sort
to
of
finish. Yeah, we don't even have time to go into UX design or what we do before we even start building, but
yeah.
Web 101, design, I guess.
Yeah, and also I said it's probably too hard to follow along, but if you can sort of get these concepts, you can sort of apply them yourselves. Front end, back end, communication, deploying it. Cool, so we've created our React app. It's now deployed, we've now pushed it to GitHub. Now I'm going to deploy it to the internet. And Netlify, you just select basically what GitHub branch you want. All of this looks fine. I should be able to deploy it. And I am just going to also change the site name here to Lamalbook. And this is where the site is going to live, lamalbook.netlify.net. Okay, so that's probably going to take a minute. So now we're going to start writing some React. And who here is familiar with React? Okay, so probably half the audience has written some React before. Okay, so that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to start the React app. Right now, there probably shouldn't be anything here apart from hello world. Or it's not going to compile because I need to delete this. And this. Cool. Okay, so we've got now a React app, which is a static app, which is writing the same thing as what our server was before. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start building the functionality. Could you pull up the code?
Hold on, I'll get the front end.
Yeah, of our example, so I know what we're
I
doing.
got it.
Okay, so the basic thing that I'm going to do before I leave this to world is I'm going to build two text boxes, one for the name, one for the message. I'm going to put a button so you can post it, and then I'm going to render all of the comments from this node. So if we're just thinking about that in raw HTML, we're going to have two inputs. We're going to have a button. And then we're going to have some sort of thing here which is going to loop over all of the comments and render. So, Okay, go. Also going to define API URL, which is where we're going to be, where our backend is hosted. So I'm just going to pull out from here. And the first thing, sorry, well, it's added a whole bunch of code in here. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to declare two variables in React. I'm going to declare the name and a setName function. I'm not really a front-end engineer, so I'm probably not going to do super well at explaining this, but how you basically store variables in React and make the UI react is by setting them in state. And you call these set state functions when you want to change variables that have also been rendered onto your page. And automatically when they're called, they cause React to refresh the page. So we need to keep our name and we need to keep our message into two variables in useState. And we're also going to keep our comments in state too. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a useEffect hook. And what a useEffect hook does is it's a bit of code which runs when something changes in React, but we're not going to be running it when anything changes. We're just going to be running it as soon as the app loads. This empty array in here basically means you can translate this in React to run this code when this component renders. Well, the first time. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a function here called getComments. And what getComments is going to do is it's going to get all of our comments, obviously. Okay, so our getComments is going to use something called fetch. And fetch is probably the most important sort of concept here with front-end web development on single-page apps. Fetch basically lets you call a backend service. it's basically do an HTTP request to whatever server I want you to, whatever URL I want you to. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calling fetch to our backend, and we're going to be getting to slash comments. And then what we do is we call .net on it. Since this is an asynchronous action which returns a promise, .then basically means this bit of code is going to take some time to run, but once it's done and we've got all of our comments back, then run this. Which we're going to take our response, and our response is going to be in JSON format, so we call response.json, which turns it basically into an object that we can work with. And then we call it then again, and we have some data now that we can use. And what we're going to do is we're going to call, I think I've got, yeah, we're going to call set comments for this data. And that should be all of our comments from the server. And what this bit of code here does is it does exactly the same thing as what clicking send here does. And we've got some comments already. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Does this work? Of course it does, it's running by us. Okay, so now I'm just going to render all of the comments out on the screen. So I'm going to go comments.map, which means run this code for every comment. Is this correct? Sorry, comment. I'm just going to quickly wrap this React stuff.
Otherwise, not complain. Yep.
And here we're just going to return let's do an H1, and now let's just go comment.name. Sorry, we're going to create a heading with the comment's name, and we're going to create a p tag with the comment.message. Okay, cool. So if this works, we should be able to see your guys' stuff. It's not read map undefined. I think I need to initialize this first. So that just puts comments to an empty array at the beginning, so it doesn't error. Okay, cool.
You should probably give the button some text.
I will do that in a second, but also my code doesn't work. Yes, I planned this. Okay, access has been blocked because of something called, because of your access control allow origin header. Now this is basically the #1 mistake that every web developer makes, including me, is there's a concept in browsers called cross-origin resource sharing. And what that means is basically if I have a backend server, your browser can't call that backend if I'm on a different website. So what would happen if you're able to do that is if someone was able to get some like bad code onto Facebook, you could then basically write, like if you're able to inject some JavaScript or something, you could get people to send like their Facebook tokens to another website. So basically, this is just a browser security feature, and it just means that front ends and back ends should only be able to talk to each other if they're on the same domain. Or you can be like what we're doing and we're just going to turn it off.
Don't do this in production.
I mean, it depends. It depends what your service is. But yeah, so I think that I do remember how to do this. Okay. Yeah, so this little bit of code in our backend basically means that yeah, we're going to allow requests from any origin from any browser. And I'm going to need to commit this. Okay, cool. And also, since we've already set up like continuous integration, this should just deploy and be live in maybe like 1 or 2 minutes. Cool. Okay, well, while while we're doing that, I'm waiting for that code to be deployed and checking if our comments work. I will quickly add some stuff to these buttons here, which are going to be letting people submit their comments. So we're just going to call the button submit. And we're going to add an on-change handler to both of these inputs so we can collect the information that people put into the inputs. So how we do that is the browser submits something every time the text changes, it sends an event. And what we can do is we can listen to this event like this. And what we can do is we can call, what one's this going to be? This is going to be name, right? So I'll just add a quick title to both of these.
Actually, put the second.
Name second, okay. And so every time this input changed, we're going to call set message with e.target.value, which is basically whatever's in that input. And I'm just going to copy this code over. I'm going to put it in here. That's going to be set name. And then on the submit button, we're going to add an on-click handler.
So when does that fire?
When you click it. Okay, so we're going to make a function and it's just going to be called save comment. And that's going to run every time you click the button. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build the request that we're going to send to the backend. And we're just going to call that a comment. And our comment is going to have the name, and it's going to have the message. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use fetch again to post something this time instead of getting it before. So we're going to go fetch, we're going to go API URL, and we're going to go, we call the /create comments. Is that right? There are the capitalization windows. Yep. And we have to set a whole bunch of parameters here because this is a post. So we go method, post. We need to set a header here. And the headers that we're going to set is we're going to set something called content type, which basically tells the backend that we're going to be sending them some JSON. And our body, we're going to call something JSON.stringify. What that does, it takes a JavaScript object and it turns it into a string so we can send it over the line. And that's going to be our comment. And we're going to call our .then again. And if data.success, which basically is we're returning true if this all works. We're just going to go set name to nothing. So we're just going to clear out those old variables that we had. Set message. And we're just going to call get messages as well. So we're going to refresh every time get comments, sorry. Yep, we're going to refresh. Okay, let's just see if this works. Cool, okay, we've got a whole bunch of stuff here. Thanks guys, appreciate it. And now, if this works, I should be able to go, hello everybody from Will. Cool, okay, and now that's gonna be working. So I'm just gonna push this up and now everyone can use it. And then Walt's gonna style it. And- Okay, I don't think we checked if our Netlify app deployed, let's check. Cool, it did deploy, so now that I've pushed that, we've automatically started building a new front end. So this should go live in a second, and then it all should be working, and then the floor is Walt's, and now he's gonna make it look beautiful. Think. But let's just wait.
Yeah, let's see if it happens. While you do that, I'm just gonna go to Google Fonts. Did someone help me pick a font? Just call it out when you see one. Hmm? Alright, we'll take this one. Actually, no, we don't want to download it. So we want a regular, we want a bold, and we're going to click on a button called embed. So what this means is that we're not doing anything with the fonts. Google's just going to pack it up, send it to our website, and let Google deal with it. So we're going to copy that. We're going to go to that. I'm going to go back to the React app.
Oh,
I'm gonna
well,
go-
also it's live, by the way.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's live, so logoutlook.netlify.app. You guys can go and post some stuff.
Which one is it?
That's fine, I haven't opened it yet. Okay, there we go, I know.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
so it's gonna be bad. We're prepared.
Yep. Nothing dodgy, please. Okay. So while that's all happening, actually, no, this is, I'm just going to go into index. Actually, no, we won't go to index, we'll do it in tab. We are just going to paste a link here. And that will download the font for us.
Well, that's, I don't think it's gonna work.
Is that? Hold
No,
on.
just do it in public index stuff.
Index. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just right there. Cool. Yeah, it would work anywhere though. Just right there. Anyway, Right, this is really hard to, it's really hard to code in such a tiny space. Okay, so we've got our field here. We've got our name, our input field, our on-chain, our name and comment field. We've got a button here. I'm just going to add. So I'm just going to add a header, which is the top of your document. Like in a normal page, it'd be where your menu was, but because we're a bit hacky at the moment, this would be. I'm just going to put a title there, and I'm going to say.
It's a production one.
Alright,
There's
that's
all
local.
sorts of stuff.
Where's local? Like 1000.
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh, it might not be right.
It's not running. Loading. Loading. And yeah, now we have a title. Now this looks a bit naff. This looks a bit naff. So I'm just going to do some. I'm just going to do some CSS to make it a bit more palatable. I'm going to create a section tag. I'm going to wrap everything inside it. And I'm nice. Who's the Navy SEAL here? All right, so we've got our section tag, And what we're gonna do is over here, we're gonna put a create a section tag. We're gonna say, on every section tag, we're gonna set a max width of, say, 800px. So that means everything on this page, max width 800px. And now we're gonna set a width, 100%, which means that take up the whole page, unless on mobile, because until it hits 800px, it'll take up the whole page. I'll show you in a second. And I'm going to add a margin, which tells me where on the page should it sit, how much spacing should I give it. So right now I'm gonna write margin 0, switch it, auto. And just like that, it's centered. So we have a look here. Nice. We have, the page is now centered. What we're gonna do next is add a bit of padding, which is the internal spacing. So what I was talking, well, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Everything in HTML is a box, in a box, in a box, in a box. You've got your body, which is one box. You've got your div, which is where your root div, which is where React injects everything you just typed, everything we just typed. We've got a section which we just created, and if you look over here, so the actual box is where the green, oh, hold on, is where the green border ends. We've told it, go to the center, give it a bit of margin, but the edge between the green and the orange, that's the actual section box that we've just written. But yeah, for further reading, see it, look up the box, CSS box model. Okay, so now we had that font that we embedded earlier. What we're going to do is we're going to look, so we're going to specify Lato. Yeah. And just like that. Oh, seriously? That's a bit dodgy. Could someone?
Do that again.
Yeah. This will take 5 minutes. We won't do the raising animation.
Okay.
So yeah, this will take 5 more minutes. We could probably skip to the final result.
Yeah, should we,
Yeah.
do you guys want us to skip to the final result, or do you want us to say smooth start? Because we've got a copy of it.
Yeah, we've got a final copy. Raise your hands if you want to see the final thing, or if you want to keep going for CSS. 50-50? Should we just show the final thing?
Let's go.
We're running out of time.
Yeah, we're on.
What was the URL again?
I can't remember. It's on my
Just
network.
pull it up and it'll be like,
Yeah.
So if we had more time, I was going to go into CSS gradient animations and making stuff move automatically, but we're out of time, so let's just jump into it.
Yeah, so this is what we built last night in about an hour and a half. But I think I deleted the database, but yeah, that's what we wanted to make it look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in summary, I guess, what we kind of want to show was like an end-to-end connected application. And it usually takes a lot longer than an hour to build something like this. That's why we had to go pretty quickly. But hopefully the key concepts really are like the back end talking to the database, saving data, your front end talking to your back end, posting the comments in, and then you can sort of expand this concept as far as you want really to make sort of any sort of application. And you know, the next sort of steps or something like this would be users logging in, authentication, showing different data depending on what user is actually doing,
there was, apologies if it was a bit too much to go through, but we hope you learned something and hope you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll probably be hanging around for a while, so if anyone wants to say,